Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Bobby Taff, and I'm the Executive Director of the organization MITPJA. For those of you that aren't familiar with our organization, MITPJA is an acronym for Movies in the Park, Jamaica. Now, Movies in the Park, Jamaica is an organization, a social enterprise that I started approximately 2.5 or so years ago, back in 2018. I was visiting Jamaica at the time, and I was considering opportunities to create events for the local community. I noticed that there was a lack of family-oriented free events for the community. And then based on my knowledge and background in event production and in film production, I thought what better way than to, create a free community film festival, an opportunity to promote both the, Caribbean historical arts and cultural industry, as well as an opportunity for local community members to share their stories with other community members. And since then, it has grown into the organization that it is today. And we are running free community screenings, as well as offering artist talks like tonight, as well as educational programming for local communities, such as film camps, which will be running this summer in Jamaica, and professional development programs for artists, as well as an educational catalog providing exhibition opportunities for Caribbean films. So tonight's conversation is taking time to acknowledge the day in Canada, which is Bell Canada's Let's Talk Day, which is a day to generate awareness about mental health issues in Canada. So tonight we're talking with Trivelle Simpson, a Caribbean Canadian award-winning filmmaker, about his film, a short film that they've just recently produced called Talk, which is on the subject of Black mental health. And joining us tonight is Dr. Vibe, an award-winning Caribbean Canadian podcaster. So I would like to introduce, first of all, Dr. Vibe to everyone. And Dr. Vibe, you could talk a little bit about your background and experience as a podcaster and as a journalist.
Thank you so much. And with that introduction, do you get any time to sleep? When do you sleep?
I try and sleep when I can,
Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure that you do sleep. But joking aside, I'd like to thank you and your organization for allowing me to be part and share during this very important conversation. We know it's Bell Let's Talk Day. I'm just going to say 30 seconds. Just rest in power, Cicely Tyson. Great icon. We lost her today. So just like to say rest in power to Ms. Tyson. For myself, I'm a two-time Canadian Ethnic Media Association award winner. I also host the only podcast in the world for dads and fathers that is sponsored by Dove Men Care. I have hosted over 2,000 online conversations, and I work predominantly with fathers and men because I believe that the better fathers and men are, the better the world will be. That's just me. And you can push back on me, but that's the way I do. So on that space, mental health is very, very much an important part of what I do, because I've noticed that one of the top 3 challenges that men come to me about, one of the top challenges is mental health and emotional challenges. So this is a very relevant conversation, not only today, but every day of the year. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vibe. And then also, joining us tonight is filmmaker Trivelle Simpson. So Trivelle, I'd like you to take a moment just to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I want to thank you guys so much for the platform. Dr. Vibe, for taking time out of your busy podcast and hosting schedule to share space with us. I've had the lovely benefit of collaborating with different artists over the past decade to create a litany of 5 music videos, a feature film, the short film that we present here today, a mini documentary. Fortunately for the team and the people I work with, our last feature, Disintegrate, was able to win the Viewer's Choice Award at the Vox Popular Film Festival, for which we were greatly proud and excited. And outside of that, as a sort of a personal passion, I've operated as a youth worker for 13 years, just dealing with young people, usually connected to church and other religious programs, talking them through the crisis of becoming mature in a complex world.
Very nice.
Can I add one other quick thing to everyone that's on here live? This is not only a safe space, but it's a brave space. Just wanted to add that there.
And I just wanted to add to that also, it is a safe place, and I would like you to, freely express yourselves and talk about any issues that you personally have experienced, whether it was you personally and or in relation to somebody that you were in a relationship with and or family member, but just keeping in mind that it isn't a private space because of the fact that it is being recorded. This is an event that is being recorded and is going to be made publicly available on the branded YouTube channel. And that is free content, and it is in an effort to draw awareness about the issues that we're talking about tonight. If you are comfortable with sharing any personal information publicly, then please, by all means, do so. But if it's just a matter of, needing an opportunity to express yourself, please use the chat window and express yourself there. Obviously, that content will be publicly made available. With that, let's go into the conversation. So Trivelle,
Yes, ma'am.
we wanted to talk a little bit about your predominantly about your short film talk. So maybe you can, just set that up by talking about this, the synopsis for the film. So what the film is about, and then, why you felt the need to tell this particular story.
I think all good art is a collaborative experience. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Brandon Rowe, the writer and producer for the short film, who approached myself with the idea of telling a story about delayed trauma in the Black community. And we wanted to explore what is the cost of not dealing with your emotional turmoil. Rather motivated by that, Brandon wrote a beautiful story of a man who faces finally his demons. I think a lot of times people get distracted in their sadness by an absence of the things that they want. So Brandon's concept was to create a man who has what he was chasing and still does not feel fulfilled. And what conversation would that man have with himself? And in that, hopefully an inspiration for the conversations that we as people would want to have with our loved ones. And that is the kernel of the idea. Everything that stems out of that is done with the work of Brandon Rowe, myself, our cinematographer, Ryan Faneri, to construct a story that tells what we hope is the biggest spectrum of a delayed trauma mental health experience in a short film of 15 minutes. So it's a big bite of the apple, but that's what we're looking to explore. There is a cost for the pain that we don't treat. Similar to a soldier on the battlefield, when wounded, you must be treated or the injury can become fatal. And I think that's what we're trying to explore.
Okay. All right. So the first clip we're going to share from that film tonight poses the question about the origins of, mental health issues, whether it's societal or if it's, biological. So let's share that clip, and then we could talk a little bit more about, why that particular question was posed in the way it was in the film. Okay. So just give me 1 minute and I will cue this up.
I must say, by the way, to the both of you, you guys both look fantastic. I mean, Dr. Vibe has this phenomenal red ensemble, beautiful coloring. I mean, Bobby, this beautiful, is that a salmon color shawl?
Oh my goodness. Seriously, we're talking about that right now.
A lot's happening. A lot's happening I wasn't ready for. I'm here in a blue sweater. Somebody should have told me.
All right. Thank you for that. And yes, Dr. Vibe, you look, especially handsome tonight. So thanks for, taking notice of that, Trivelle. So let's just go to the clip 1 second here. everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I think we need to talk about what your plan is in regards to your son.
What do you mean my plan for my son?
Well, a young man, having seen what he saw, can suffer
Suffer
from
from what?
long-term effects.
Look, there's
Considering
no
that we know that his mother's illness can
illness.
often be
Look,
hereditary and...
My son is nothing like his mother, nothing like his father. My son is strong.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit about that clip and why you decided to frame that particular question or answer to that question in this film?
Yeah, I think this is something that we workshopped as a team. The thing within art that you want to be informative is you want to sort of lean on the traditional tropes. So we were big on wanting to create a story where people could fill it with their own life experience. And what we could not ignore, though mental health can exist with what can sometimes be considered subtle or subconscious events, what could not be ignored across the vast majority of the experiences we've had is there's usually an inciting incident that people go back to that began their process of camouflaging their feelings or began their process of perhaps even silent suffering. So for us, it was about putting that front and center, starting the piece with a moment that could be traumatic, a doctor trying to be clinical, a father perhaps not fully able to accept the nature of his reality. And unfortunately, for those who watch the film, spoiler alert, a victim on the bed and a son who witnesses, quite frankly, the unthinkable.
So let's talk about the stigma associated with mental health issues, because it seems like the character of the father was very adamant in, disclaiming the fact whether or not, it was a hereditary issue.
Yeah.
So is that a position that you find that's very common within the community? And then we could talk about the stigmas associated with mental health and how, as a community, you've experienced from personal experience, talking about your work with youth, how, people with suffering from mental health issues are treated and are affected by other people's opinions or attitudes or behavior.
Yeah, I guess the dialogue of that scene, I have to be honest, I pull from conversations with a multitude of men, but most specifically my own father, who he would not be happy if I didn't make this clear, is nothing like the father character in the film, but I think the mentality, they're cousins. I once asked my father his thoughts on therapy, if he would ever go to see a therapist. Not that this matters. My father was born in 1957 in Clarendon, Jamaica. He does not want to go to therapy. And so I asked him, I said, why don't you want to go to therapy? Because without revealing his story, my father should go to therapy. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen where he should probably talk to someone. And my father said, there is something uncomfortable about admitting that I couldn't handle my own life. Something uncomfortable about admitting I couldn't handle my own life. And in realizing that he fathered me that way and parented me that way, if you talk to any of my friends, they'd say Trivelle's the guy who seems like it's always fine. And that is that's a subset from a father who taught me be strong. A monkey could only ride your back if it's bent. You run through the world with power. I think that the stigma of mental illness, unlike any other form of illness, is that it beligns weakness more than vulnerability. I say that to say this: when someone has a cold, we think that they're vulnerable, so we treat them, we give them medicine. When we think someone is weak, we encourage them to be strong, which is a self-reliant emotion. To be strong, you pull it from within yourself. To be treated, you take it from others. And I think that the nature of the stigma is seeing mental illness not as a vulnerability that requires treatment, but as a weakness that requires self-strength, which is helpful. I'm not alienating that, but I think that that kernel of an idea creates this clear divide that can sometimes be unhelpful. And we use that in framing the father's response, which is whatever my son has seen, whatever he's been impacted by it, he will be strong enough to pull from within himself the tools to make it through it, whether that's true or not.
And then based on your experience working with youth that suffer from mental health issues, has that been the case where they do have this strength that they can pull from? I feel like you were the exception more than the norm in that sense because of the fact that, you had a strong family influence, role model in your life, that being your father, and whether or not his position on mental health was something that was positive or negative, it helped you to cope with your own issues. Now, a lot of the kids that you dealt with, I don't believe come from or have that same support system, which is why they're in the position that they are in. What was your experience with dealing with kids that were suffering from this issue, and what supports were available to them, if there were? And did they talk to you personally, or did you observe any of the stigmas associated with mental health that they were experiencing?
Yeah, I think, we would be doing a disservice to the nature of the film, to the content, to not identify the difference between the impacts of mental health on Black and brown peoples and perhaps everyone else. What I noticed for myself when dealing with young people, there was what felt like almost cultural dismissiveness to the presence of mental health issues in our younger Black and brown students. There was a concept that someone was faking. There was a concept that someone was doing it for attention. There was a concept that someone didn't fully understand. I've even heard, my son's going through puberty, and I felt like, I don't know if this is what puberty looks like. I think in dealing with young people, the critical thing is, which is why my heart goes out to them, young people are in the midst of figuring themselves out. They are literally in the midst of change. And I think it's on us to steer how they feel, how they evolve in that change. And I think that the presence of mental health issues to go untreated, which is a status that affects the brain, the cognitive reasoning, how you see yourself, how you see your future, how you see how you fit in your future, those levels of deductive reasoning being attacked in a young person in the midst of being told that this is the most important thing in your life, which is how you're going to fit into your future, how you're going to grow, it hamstrung us as leaders, but I think it also hamstrung some of our young people in feeling mute. So what would occur with them, which I think our character expresses, is when you're 14, 15, you're waiting for tomorrow. All my youth are telling me, I can't wait till I'm 20. I can't wait till I'm 21 because it will be better. They're waiting for it to go away. They're not waiting for it to get help because they've accepted, if even only on a subconscious level, help's not coming. So I just need to get older and get over. When they hit 21, 22, and they did not get over, now we're in a new place. Then they start saying, I can't wait till I'm 25. Then they start saying, I can't wait till I get married. Then it becomes, I can't wait till I have my first child. Can't wait till I buy my house. Can't wait till I get my first car. It's gonna be so good, so fast. We kick down the can, this thing that started so small, but the more you kick it down the road, it collects more dust, more memories, more moments of impact. And I think, what I've seen, which is why I deal with youth, is I plant seeds that I may never see flourish. What I tell them at 14, they're not going to come back to me a day later and say, Trivelle, that was fantastic, thank you. But it's the idea that the seeds that I give them are tools that they'll use when they're 21 and realize that they have come to the end of their rope of assuming that they could have done it on their own and are now in need of some mechanisms that are outside of their reach.
Okay. Doctor, if I was going to give you a moment to contribute to the conversation.
Wow, there's so much there, Trivelle. I'm going to just ask, interesting you mentioned about the teens when they get into their early 20s, and especially for for young men.
Yeah.
They get to their late teens, early 20s, and they're not a teenager anymore, but they're not a man.
That's right.
And that's one of those key areas of growing up. And I think I also want to ask you, one of the things I really believe, especially when it comes to young people, is they emulate what they replicate.
Mm-hmm.
In your dealings, not your dealings, in your helping of young people, how much are they either imitating their parents or the culture out there and are not spending time getting their own identity? And does that cause a mental health challenge at times?
Yeah, I think to that point, I say it for myself all the time. So my parents are the single greatest influence in my life, but they are not the biggest influence on my life, if that makes sense. So
absolutely,
my parents may take up 20%. No other thing in my life will take up 20%, but it is still another 80%. And what I noticed in young people, and this is just the nature of our world we live in, this is not an attack against parenting at all. Young people they're being self-parented by disjointed information that they're finding on their own. What we know about television, songs, they are not complete concepts of an idea. They are designed to be flashpoints that provide just a kernel. In trying to be parented or grown or reared or learn how to love or express love, or learn how to express frustration through these snippets, these songs, these movies, these quick conversations with your friends, you eventually get to the end of those moments and there's inconsistencies there. And they are emulating it insofar as it stops working. Once it stops working, this is where people learn how to put on a facade. I always say that most of the behavior that people have that they don't like about themselves was learned in a state of defense. So you only lied because you were scared. You only hid something because you thought it was of value or you thought somebody would break it. These concepts are true of young people when dealing with their own personalities. When the bravado didn't work and they felt like they wanted to cry, the world said they should not cry, so they found something else to do. I always say anger, for example. Anger is not a primary emotion, but it is the result of one. So when you scream, you're not angry. There's something happening. You're either not feeling heard. Perhaps you're feeling misunderstood. So now you're screaming. All these misdirections, I think, stem up in young people. So they're emulating what they see, which is where youth programs, mentorship. I myself, as a young man, I had a mentor. This is a guy who would come pick me up from my house every Friday night and just sit with me, speak with me. For me, especially as a young man, show me what it was to be a man. Show me what it was to tell the truth even when it hurt. That's something I say to this day. I'll tell the truth even if it sucks, because I was taught that. If left to the devices of the media or my friends around me, I would not have learned that. So I think for us who are older brothers, older cousins, older fathers, proximity is a form of medication. Just be close and be who you are. It speaks volumes, even in your weakness, because people will learn from your inadequacy. A quick story, and then I'll turn it back over. I was with my father the day he met his father. We were together. I met my grandfather the same day my dad met his father. And leaving that meeting, my father finally, I'd never seen the man cry. I've seen him cry twice. Is crying and says, "That is why I will not be like that." Because you learn sometimes from the darkness that you've been running from. So I think our young people are seeking examples, whether it be consciously or subconsciously. And I think it's up to us to try and create that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Trivelle. I just wanted to just to say, in just noticing the time here, we are running short on time. So I'm just going to cue up the next clip and we'll just continue the conversation from there. Okay. So just saying, if we can keep our responses, obviously conversational, but just to be conscious of the time that we have left.
Mm-hmm.
Just bear with me.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, want to play?
Sure. Why are you laughing?
You look old.
Stress will do that to you.
What?
You'll learn soon enough.
What is that?
It's nothing.
Want to trade?
No. I remember that.
Yeah. That hurt.
I was so young. I should have never seen that.
And smell.
Smell?
Yeah. The nasty smell from when he rubbed his death sticks on her arm.
How do I not remember that?
I hide it.
Hide what?
The memories. Then they can't hurt me.
You see? That's exactly why we're here now. What's all that hiding stuff done for us?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
I don't know.
You're talking nonsense.
No, you are.
What?
I'm just a kid.
I know.
I can't help.
Then why are you here?
Okay. So that was another scene from your film Talk, and that touched on childhood abuse as being a cause of, dealing with delayed mental health issues. So if you could talk a little bit about that particular scene, and again, why that particular aspect of delayed response in childhood abuse, and why you decided to use that as the cause for mental health deterioration with that particular character.
Yeah. I mean, first as an artist, Troy Crossfield Tatum, who plays a young boy, absolutely destroyed that. Troy had one of the longest days I've seen an actor do, and to perform to that level was a gift. Simply put, parenting is an imperfect exercise. There are flaws in every attempt at parenting. All would probably be claimed to be mistakes or accidents, but all can sometimes have horrific components. And we felt that this was ours. To see violence between two parents, unhealthy relationship, to be caught in the middle, to be injured. These felt like horrific truths, but also truths that probably fall too common in society.
Okay. So while they are horrific truths and they're very common within society, and it's something that you decided to explore, have you found that it's a truth that is not readily discussed, especially amongst Black men?
Yeah, I don't know too many men, I'll say specifically Black men. I don't know too many Black men who talk about their childhood without adding humor to handle the truth of what they're talking about. It's humor is a mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not using humor, you're usually using silence. I have friends that I've had in my life for 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, know a lot about these men. I've cried with these men. I couldn't tell you 7 details about their childhood. And it's because I think that's done deliberate. That there comes a time when we all said, you know what, that's not who I'm going to be. That's not who I am. And I'm not going back there. So we'll handle it with what it is now.
Okay. Dr. Vibe will give you a chance to contribute.
Yeah, and it's Troy Crossfield. Hail up. I know he's watching, and as usual, Troy, excellent job. One of the things I see there is the communication between a young person and their parents. And how critical is that in regards to preventing mental health challenges?
I think immensely critical. I think that the gap in parenting is always underestimating their children at every age. You know, so when it's time to talk about something, you assume they're too young. By the time you talk about it, they're far too old and know a bit too much about the subject. I think this is why we say parenting is a tough exercise, you know, because the concept is, as a parent, you want to control talking to your child about the most traumatic things or the biggest things in their life. But how do you control if they're exposed to those things too early? Well, I think the truth is you have to lean into it. If you have a young child who witnesses violence, domestic violence, as much as you may have wanted to wait to talk about that, I think you've lost that luxury in the reality that they've seen something that they're going to be processing. So they did a great job as performers, that the youngest version of himself and the oldest version of himself have probably the longest form and most coherent conversation, which is a challenge to us that says, do not underestimate our young people. You know, give them the tools to grow well and strong.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I'm just going to, again, in the interest of time, I would ask you to elaborate, but we are running short on time. So I'm just going to queue up our next clip. Just bear with me 1 second here.
Man, I can't believe I took this.
We should have made that team. Politics. I went to the Y every day. It was all for nothing.
Man, I must have cried for days.
What? I didn't cry at all. I can't think of the last time I did.
Me either.
Keep that shit in.
Real men don't cry.
Yep. That's what you used to say.
He was a piece of shit, you know.
Dad? Nah, don't say that.
You'll understand when you're older and have your own kids. Trust me.
Do you still see Mom?
No.
I was just so awful to her. I blow up and not even know why I'm blowing up.
Like a ticking time bomb. All she wanted to do was help. But it was hard to be happy.
So angry. I could only talk about it
In my head. But not out loud.
Yep. I blamed her for everything.
It wasn't her fault, man. It was his.
Yeah. He probably would have killed her if she stayed.
So why were we so angry when she left?
I don't know.
Anybody would have done the same. Looks like we were mad at everybody.
Another powerful scene from your film Talk that was just produced this year. Maybe you could talk a little bit about setting up that scene. Sorry, talking about that scene.
I mean, that's all on the page.
Mm.
That's all on the page. That's a credit to Brandon Rowe. I can't give him enough credit. You're a filmmaker. You get some great words to work with. It helps. But I think we all have those conversations we've had in our head, whether it be the healthiest ones or the unhealthy ones, and it becomes this carousel. And I think Troy encapsulates that perfectly. That's him as a teen, and he's asking the same questions now as a young man because he's never taken it out of his own head. And there are times when to get the answers, you have to involve someone else in the process. So that is a subtle call to therapy and psychoanalysts and help from an external source.
Okay. So that scene, from what I understand it, is about the main character who is exploring, the issues that he's dealing with, and he's revisiting himself at earlier points in his life. And then at that particular moment, he's talking to his teenage self about the reasons why he experienced a lot of the anger and the range of emotions that he was dealing with, and recognizing, why he was blaming or, placing blame where on his mother, as opposed to accepting responsibility for his own emotions. Is that something that you found was very common with the youth that you dealt with in your role as a crisis manager? Again, kind of bringing it back to, the larger society and personal experience based on your experiences working with youth?
Yeah, I think whether it be a parental figure, young people, but even older people, they're great about finding a talisman for their anger. So to filter their anger into an external source, most times one that cannot speak back or cannot offer any rebuttal, it's an unfriction throwing of anger, disappointment. He picked his, he picks his mom because she can't say anything to him, which makes her the best source for his anger, because it then has nowhere to go but into this abyss. When you throw anger at something that could throw it back, you're challenged now, and you have to learn and grow. And that's not sometimes what people are looking for. But yeah, I think we found that with young people. Dr. Vibe, what do you think?
I fully agree with what you're saying in regards to that. And not much more to be said, especially in the limited amount of time that we have. I fully agree and fully understand that. You talk about the abyss, and we don't have enough time again, but just what we've experienced in the last year. And I'm sure you've seen what the last year has done to some of our young people, some that were in an abyss and that they've gone further down, and others that were never in an abyss that are in an abyss now. And then their parents that are not equipped, let alone maybe they have their own mental health challenges, but now having to deal with their children's, it's a multiplier.
And that brings up a good point with dealing with COVID and, dealing with, the breakdown, of mental health within the larger society, looking at coping mechanisms and resources that are, that do exist. What have you found that was of help or of benefit to the kids that you were working with, Trivelle? And how can we be more proactive in being the solution as opposed to being the problem or contributing to the deterioration of somebody else's mental illness?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the original point we were making about proximity. You got to stay close and set an example. The presence of mental illness, but more specifically, I think the common one that people deal with oftentimes is issues with depression, is a concern and an inability to frame a future you want to be a part of. So you have to stay close to those people and make future plans. Hey, we'll talk tomorrow. I'll see you next week. We'll do this. Because if you allow them to stay in the pattern of tomorrow does not look great, those conversations don't end well. That mentality is not healthy. So I think proximity and future planning, those are the go-to tactics every time I'm dealing with young people. Because similar to this Zoom conversation, you never get it all in the hour. So you make a plan. We'll talk tomorrow. We'll talk next week. Call me again. you got to keep momentum. Momentum is the strongest source to treatment when dealing with mental health. I don't know if there's a dissenting opinion, perhaps, Dr. Vibe.
No, not to say. I think that one of the things that's really key is just staying in contact with people, really and truly. Yes, we're in a pandemic, but this is a time to really invest in relationships. And just, you know, every week there's about 3 or 4 people, different people. I'll just send them a text message and ask them, "You good?" You know, I have one of my closest friends right now. He just lost his mother, and I'm checking in on him every day. Is there anything I can help you with? You good? Because it's not the big things that make a difference. It's the little things that make a difference. And also to accepting our young people where they are, not where we want them to be.
Correct. Huge.
Yeah. All right. I just, again, in the interest of time, because I would love to contribute more to kind of that frame of thought, but I just wanted to open the floor up now to general conversation and questions from any of the other participants. So you could migrate your conversation. Doesn't look like anyone was chatting, but I will unmute everyone, and then you could.
Well, Faiza has something that she's saying. Something Trivelle said that staying with me is things learned, quote, as a form of defense, unquote. How do we begin to unlearn these habits that may be impacting our mental well-being? Great question.
Phenomenal question. I would love to bring everyone else in as well. From an answer perspective, I'll be brief. Mental health and defense mechanisms are like things in a diet. A diet isn't so much about what you stop doing, but what you start doing. You just have to introduce new habits into your diet. And the habits that are better for you will digest better and will produce better fruit. So it's all about using multiple tactics. I'm a huge believer in that, trying as many new things as possible. So I'm not here to change the defense mechanisms that you have already, because they're core to who you are. I'm here to add additional ones, similar to a coach in a sports team or a job. I turn it over to the floor.
I would also add that even strong people struggle, right? It's not just the weak that struggle. The strong people struggle also. So if you have a mental health challenge, acceptance is one of the first things, and not acceptance in a bad way, hey, but surrounding yourself with good people who will accept you when you're doing good and when you're not doing good is a key thing. It just in my opinion that you've got those ride or die people that are with you regardless. They believe in you, and they believe in you whenever and whatever. Just a thought.
Yeah, you brought up something interesting when you talk about, surrounding yourself with good people. One of the adverse effects from that, though, is that you're limiting your networks and your supports and your community. When you become surgical in your relationships or how you handle your relationships, meaning severing ties with people, it limits the supports that are available to you. How is there another approach that we can take? Because I notice that's a very common approach within the community. And then that, yes, it allows people to first isolate themselves. And then that kind of contradicts, any kind of supports that are being promoted when it talks to, having somebody and having people that you can, have these open conversations with. If you don't have as many people to talk about the issues that you're dealing with, how are you able to get the help that you need?
Well, Trivelle, you go on that first. I have a response, but Trivelle, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I think, I wasn't, when I say to take on new habits, it's not so much in eliminating ones that you have, but I think people cling to what they find works most efficiently for them, and people are incredibly fluid. So what works efficiently for you today may not be what works efficiently for you tomorrow. I don't think that's a form of alienating who you were yesterday, but it is a form of embracing fully who you are today. And I think that is a foundational aspect of joy in oneself and combating the perils of mental illness. Dr. Vibe.
I will just say, and I somewhat agree. I think though I want quality, not quantity. And for me, it may limit me, but for just on my own thing, I'd rather have that quality than having a whole bunch of people. Like and I think another thing, you got to develop a friendship before you develop a relationship. So again, I don't want everyone. I want the right ones. I want those people who are with me. So I'd rather have 3 or 4 that are with me all the time than 15. And when I call 12 out of those 15, they're not with me. That's just me. And I hear what you come about limiting, but I really want that quality. And as I go along in my journey, I say to some people, sometimes you got to get smaller to get stronger. Sometimes you have to go that route. Not all the time, but there are periods of times where you're going to have to. That's just for me. And others have come to say, yeah, you know what? I just need that tight circle because I can't count on those other people.
So I wanted to touch, again, in the interest of time, on the stigmas associated with mental health issues, and in the role we play in reinforcing that stigma. So with the language that we use and behavior that we exhibit when we identify somebody as being or suffering from mental health issues, it's very common for people to withdraw or to treat them different. And to mislabel or misidentify people that are or may not be suffering from mental health issues by calling them crazy or unstable. What can we do to be more proactive and mindful in our, other than the obvious, not obviously maligning people by calling them that, but what else can we do? And how can we encourage others to do the same? Is it time that we call people out on that type of behavior when we witness it firsthand? And how could we do that without it being confrontational? So if you can, impart some kind of feedback or input on that, that'd be great.
Well, Dr. Vibe, I know you do a podcast. I would turn over to you first.
That was a good deflect, Trivelle. That was a great deflect. For me, joking aside, for me, again, I get back to that thing, friendship and relationship, and do more listening than talking. And if you believe in that person, I'm going to use a stock market analogy. Relationships are an investment. They're not an expense. So, and the term, as you see, I don't use the term illness. I use the word challenge.
Cool.
Why challenge though?
Because when you say illness, a lot of people, it will make people feel deflated. And when I say challenge, I say this is a challenge and I believe you can overcome this challenge. A lot of people, especially from Caribbean background, mental health illness, Terrell can relate, right? It's like you said with your dad, right?
Yeah.
He's just like, forget it, shut down. I like to, and I find out what works best with that person.
Right.
Because if you can get that relatability on that foundational level, that provides opportunities for them to overcome as you go on that journey.
Yeah, I think I read a note once. 90% of hurtful statements made are connected to ignorance, which means that 90% of them could be eliminated with better education. Education is a critical component to stigmatic language, because a lot of people will say, I did not know I couldn't say that. Some people do know they can't say that. They're in the 10%, God be with them. But the other 90, I think, would have a dramatic change. You don't know what you don't know. And quite frankly, you should all know a little bit more. So you're right. It is challenging. It is conversations. It is, hey, don't say that. It is, why'd you say that? It is causing people to give reason for the things that they say and the language that they use. Just to double back to Dr. Vibe's point, the only reason that I use the term mental illness when using it is I feel that using the term illness provides a sense of urgency for the support system. If I hear someone has a challenge, maybe I think I can take a day. I'll see.
That's a good point.
But if I hear that someone is in the midst of an illness, there's an urgency perhaps that's ignited in their core group of 15 or 5 to reach out to them immediately. And I think that immediacy is critical depending on the situation. So I agree with your point though, because it is a pointed bit of language to the person impacted, but also a rallying cry for the ones who must provide support. And it's about a balance, I believe.
And I just want to add on to what Trevelle's saying. For those people who are in the environment, they have to roll up their sleeves if they really care and do research. There are individuals like Trivelle, like he said, what you don't know, you don't know. I always say, the more you know, the more you need to know. So if you are going to help that person, do the research, find out. Again, Trivelle's here. There are individuals in our community who have expertise on this. Please reach out to them, because the last thing you want to do is make a misstep when you have the opportunity of getting some guidance on how to do it properly and effectively.
And speaking about, doing the research and looking at resources that are available to help you as you try and deal with either your own mental health issues or helping a loved one or a friend. Our charity partner for tonight is CAMH. So please feel free to, and I encourage everyone to visit their website. They do have a wealth of online resources that you can access. There are tools there, there are videos, there are articles, and that will be able to help you, as well as, I believe, if you are living within the Toronto GTA area, you could also call 211 if you feel that you are in the middle of distress or crisis, and there are various other crisis hotlines that you could access. So just to kind of take a step back for a minute, let's look at, and again, in the interest of time, because I know we only have a couple minutes left, dealing with yourself. Being able to identify, what struggles that you're dealing with, dealing with depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, or what have you, whether or not it's something that you want to articulate or share with anybody else. What can someone do? What advice would you give them? First, I will frame the question to you, Trivelle, and then to you, Dr. Vibe.
There's an exercise I use that it's not for everyone, but it is what I do. Once every quarter or once every month, I sit in front of a mirror for an hour and I look at myself and I go through a process of thought of really how I feel about myself. Sometimes I'm laughing, sometimes I'm crying, but I think that people are great at analyzing things, often don't use that power to analyze themselves. So I think that that moment of self-analysis lets you realize sometimes it's not as bad as you think it is. But also could bring you down. It's not as good as you think it is, but it's literally my coping mechanism to check my motives, make sure I'm always humble, make sure my mental state is where it was. So I sit in a mirror really for an hour and I just look at myself and think. And then when the hour's done, whatever's been put out, I leave, or whatever needs to grow, we begin after the mirror.
For myself, I do a number of things in lieu of time. I have 3 or 4 men in my life that know everything good about me and everything bad about me. And even when they call me out, I know that they're doing it in love, and it's vice versa. Another thing I do is meditation. Another thing I do, similar to Trivelle, but every quarter I spend some time and look at the relationships in my life. Because I can't do it all by myself. And I look at those relations. If they're going good, that's great. If the ones aren't going good, I'll say, do I want to put the energy to make them good? And I'll also actually reach out to those individuals, say, hey, something's not right. Can we get it in the right way? And if we can't, I'll pull away from those relationships, because time never lost a fight. And I want it right. So I'm a little bit older than my colleague there. So I have to realize that I have a certain amount of time investment wise to be the best that I can be, not only for myself, but for others. So I really take that time, and every day during the day, I work in 20-minute spurts. So I'll work for 20, 25 minutes, then take a mental health break, come back. And it's, research has said you work more effectively that way, and I get a good sleep. That's very key. I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night, regardless. So it just helps my mental state, my mental being. So just some of the things that I do.
Okay. For myself, I like to meditate. I don't take the kind of reassessment approach that you take, Dr. Vibe, when it comes to reevaluating my relationships. But I do try and make an effort to connect with people. And for those that I know that are dealing with issues, I always let them know that I'm available to them if they need to talk. If, for whatever, regardless of the circumstances within our personal relationship, I'm always available, just to listen, not to judge or criticize, but just to be respectful and to listen, and to be a support system if that's what they need from me. And that, I believe, hopefully, during the course of this conversation, we've been able to share some of our personal experiences, and hopefully others will be able to learn from this. And I look forward to seeing your film, Trivelle. Maybe you could let us know when it will be released. Do you have any insight into that? On what platforms we'll be able to find it? I would have liked to have invited Brandon to speak, but it doesn't look like he's going to talk tonight. I'm not really sure. I did unmute him, but it doesn't look like he's really saying anything. So maybe you could speak to the release of the film.
Yeah, art is beautiful because you are in control of the creation, but not of the release. So we complete the production process now, and we begin the festival circulation. I would just encourage everyone to follow the page for the short film, Talk 2020, and keep posted for updates. And we'll do a good job of letting people know when they can see it at mass. But it is a beautiful piece. Myself personally, best thing I've ever worked on. So I gotta think that it's amazing.
Good stuff.
Nice. And I just saw a message from Melanie 8. Everyone, congratulations, Trivelle and Brandon and the cast and the crew. So thank you for that message. And Dr. Vibe, where can everyone find your podcast?
Just go to the drvibeshow.com. All things Dr. Vibe are there. All my 2000 conversations, all the posts I do. That's the best place to get a hold of me. One quick last message I want to give to everyone watching this live or on the replay. Remember to give yourself grace.
Nice. Did you want to elaborate on giving yourself grace, just for those that don't understand?
Especially, we're coming up to a year that we've been in this situation, and we probably know at least one person that hasn't handled it the best. But we have to realize that our people, we are winners, and that sometimes you're going to make mistakes. It's all right. It's okay. Human beings. Give yourself some grace. And like when they do car races, you never see a car race where the cars don't have to go and get a refuel once in a while. So take those pit stops, pull yourself off, take a break, because taking a break is part of the process of you being great.
Nice. Okay, and on that note, we'll wrap everything up for this evening. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Trivelle. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you,
Vibe.
the viewers.
Thank you to everyone that participated tonight, that came online and watched us, and thank you to our future audience who will be seeing this. And have a great night. You can follow my organization, MITPJA, on Facebook or on Instagram at MITP Jamaica, or at MITPJA. And I look forward to seeing you again at any of our future events. We will be hosting these virtual events as opposed to the real physical events online. Whether they'll be on Zoom, I'm not sure. I'm not really happy about the limitations of this particular application, but we'll see if we could find another one for next month. Next month's event, the details of which for Black History Month will be posted online, and you'll find information about the charity we'll be supporting, as well as the film and the screening details. Okay, thank you very much. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.